Hey guys, how's it going? I just wanted to do a quick video, partly as a bit of an update, because I haven't been streaming recently, and also just to talk through a hand that I've got here. Bit of a brag as well, made a bit of a hero call, which is always nice when it goes right. But just wanted to sort of talk through my thought process. It's not a super interesting hand by any stretch of the imagination. Like it's not like every street is interesting at all, but I think it's important to not take decisions for granted in poker, and I'll talk a bit about why sort of when you think about different combos and different hands that your opponents can have, sometimes things become a lot clearer just by logically thinking through um, what we can put our opponents on. So just to start with, apologies for not streaming recently. I know a few of you guys watch the stream regularly. And the main reason for that is, well, there's two reasons. Firstly, I've been fairly unmotivated, as you're probably well aware. But also, there's just not too much benefit to streaming at the moment for me. The games are getting a lot tougher on Unibet. There seems to be a lot of regs at the 25s and the 50s, and the hundreds at the moment. And I know a few of them have been watching stream. And it's just like it's hard enough to beat the games as it is when you're battling regs. I think the regs quite high on Unibet for the stakes that we're playing, and it just doesn't really make much sense from a financial perspective for me to stream because I don't make anything out of streaming. Um, I sort of am adding in some tournaments to my game, so I may be streaming some of those, but um, I just sort of haven't really got to that stage yet. I had a nice score of PokerStars. I don't know if some of you saw that. I won, I think it was $20,000, 20,500, and then they closed my account pretty much instantly. Um, Funnily enough, I was actually playing on my girlfriend on an account in my girlfriend's name, but I somehow managed to get the money off. So I'm not going to complain too much. Decent payday for me, but unfortunate to lose the account. So I am back on sort of Unibet where I was looking to move over to tournaments on sort of a more of a full-time basis on PokerStars and that, but not to be. Um, so I will be streaming some tournaments when the Unibet Open Series or whatever it's called, the UOS, comes up in the next few weeks. But until then, just sort of going to be playing most of my games off stream. Anyway, this is an interesting, well, not interesting. This is a hero call I've made today at the 50 Euro Games. So I've been playing this guy for a few games. He's been playing. Well, I think he's a recreational. I'm pretty sure of that. He's been playing fairly face up. He's been limping everything that he's not raising, so he's not open folding really. Um, he's been limping all of his weak hands. He's been min raising some sort of middling hands, and he's also been open jamming a bit. But I haven't called any of his open jams, so I wouldn't be able to put him on a specific range for open jams whether it's strong. But I would assume it's the stronger range based on what I've seen at Showdown. So like I've never really seen him limp any strong hands at this point. Later on, playing him, he did start limping in some stronger hands, but up to this point he hadn't. So anyway, we are 2550, and the effective stacks are, was it 815? So we're just over 16 big blinds. So Queen 8 off. If I'm thinking that he's limping a weak range and he's not folding any of his weak hands, we have to include every hand in his range here, down to 7-2 off, 3-2 off, etc. So there's definitely some merit to raising some of my weaker stuff here. So I was raising some like 3-2 off type hands against him, and I was getting it through for the most part. But Queen 8 sort of flops relatively well, and we're going to have some of his hands dominated, and he's not going to have us dominated that much. He's not really going to have many stronger 8x. Could have some stronger Queen X, but we're going to have more him dominated more than he's going to have us dominated. So I like to just check this one. Now, on this flop, I have been floating quite a lot. Looking back at it, I think I prefer raising, I think. because we only have a gut shot on 1 over to second pair. I just think we just don't have that much equity. I mean, flatting's fine, but I think raising is better. And I hadn't actually been raising, I hadn't been check raising much, if at all. So in hindsight, I think check raising is better. Then gives us a bit of a lead, the betting lead on the turn, where if we call here, we are, I guess, vulnerable to him barreling off on turn cards, where we're just going to have to fold, because you think we're going to have 200 in the pot, and he's probably going to go minimum of 100, and we can't be calling sort of 100 off these stacks, unless we improve to a 10 or a queen, maybe an 8, but even an 8 is not going to be great for us. So I would play that differently if I were to play it again, but on this hand I elected to just call. And we see the king and clubs turn, so this is what I'm talking about in terms of like him barreling, right? So any competent heads-up player will barrel this card as a bluff. If they've just got air, they will barrel this card, because anything we have here, we can easily have 2x, 9x, because it's just a limped pot. We're probably going to be folding to a barrel, queen 8 type hands, 10-8 to less extent, you know, those sort of hands, but like maybe 8-7, or like 10-7 that we could float the flop with. We're going to have to just fold those now. I know that we pick up a double gutter with 10x, but it's not ideal. So that's why I sort of wanted to touch on raising the flop. But anyway, we're lucky that he checks it back here. And I'm expecting this to just get checked down now, because we're not going to give him much credit for ace-x, especially at 16 big blinds. We're expecting him to open jam a lot of his ace-x based on the way that he's been playing, or certainly min-raising them if he's got maybe stronger ace-x. But I think we can also, when you look at the different hands that he can have here, in terms of like, sorry, it sort of skipped there. I've sort of lost my train of thought here. Okay, so we're talking about before he jams, we just look at this guy and we think, okay, I could quite easily be good here, because if he checks back, I would expect him to have not hit the board. He could have 2x, he could have 9x, but generally our queen high is going to be good, because we would expect him to bet a king on the turn if he's got it, and we would expect him to bet an ace on the river, but we would also expect him to be raising the ace-x pre, so we're not giving too much credit for an ace-x here. Queen 10, he would bet the turn 100%. And there aren't really too many other hands he would bet the river here for value with on this card, because this is going to be a scare card for him as well. If he's got a jack, if he's got a 9, if he's got a deuce, he's probably not going to bet any of those three on the river. A king he would bet on the turn, and an ace he would raise pre. So in theory, I'm looking at this that you can't apply this to everyone, because certain opponents are going to check back some pairs, or they're going to slow play some ace-x or that sort of thing. But against this guy, who had been playing fairly face up, to me it seemed like I've probably got the best hand here. You know, and if he checks back, it's probably worse for me if he checks back, because if he checks back, he's probably got some showdown value. He probably has a 2, or he probably has a 9. But when he bets, that's what we want, because he's going to bet all of his bluffs. I mean, he will check some of his bluffs occasionally, but the only way he's going to win the pot with a bluff is by bluffing effectively. And he opts for the shove here, which is sort of 3.5 times the pot. Now I guess the initial instinct is to just snap fold. We've got queen high, he's jammed all in, you know, for 715 into a 200 pot. What are we doing even thinking about calling? And that was my initial reaction as well, even though I've sort of had the same thought process that I was talking about just now. I was just going to fold. You know, what is the point of me playing a recreational who I've probably got an edge on, just calling this in a situation where I'm just going to look stupid when he shows up with ace deuce, or you know, king 9. I don't know, like king 9 not so much, because he's probably going to bet that on the turn, but ace deuce is probably one hand that he could turn up with here, I guess, if he's not going to be jamming his ace-x pre. But like I said, I would be expecting him to do that. So when I talk through all of those situations, like, the jam just makes it even more easier of a call, and I'll tell you why. Because if he has like ace 10, right, and he's limped in an ace, and you know he's bet the flop, which is probably going to be standard, and then he's checked the turn because he hasn't really got much. You know, if he has ace 10, ace 8, that sort of hand, he's probably just going to look to value bet the river, maybe 100, 150, maybe 200. Why would he jam here? He knows I'm not very strong because, I would probably bet Queen 10 at some point. I'm not going to have any A6 in my range because I haven't raised in pre. So really, I'm capped, but also he's capped because, he's just made his hand super polarized here with this bet sizing. And something just didn't feel right to me. And I think when you look at the hands that he's going to be doing this with, Queen 10 would be obviously the most obvious one. And we would 100% expect him to bet Queen 10 on the turn. No other straights get there. So then we start looking at what sets. Well, he's not going to have any sets. He'd raise aces, kings, jacks. He would bet deuces on the turn. He'd bet nines on the turn, especially when the board gets a bit scarier for him. Two pair combos, ace deuce is probably the most likely, but would he jam it? So there wasn't really any combo of hand that I could put this guy on, right? And I opted for the call, and he shows 10-6. And I think the reason I'm making this video is sort of just a bit of an explanation of my thoughts, but it's not so much a brag because I make hero calls every day for people that watch my stream, but sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. It's not that exciting, and I'm not here to sort of big myself up. It's just talking about when you look at the actual combos of hands that people have, it's actually quite easy to put people on a range sometimes, especially in heads up where there's only sort of two players in the pot, one's on the button, one's in the big blind. Probably a bit different 6 max, 9 max, where you've got people in all different types of positions, you've got less reads on them, that sort of thing. But for those of you guys that are sort of interested in heads up or play heads up, I think this is sort of a good spot to look at and say, okay, we can narrow his combos down to, or narrow his range down to pretty much solely bluffs. And another thing that we've got going for us is we also have the queen. So it's less likely that he has Queen 10 because we block Queen 10. So when you put all of these things together, none of it made sense, and I went for the hero call, even though I probably had an edge on this guy. Well, I would say I almost certainly have an edge on this guy long term. But sometimes you just got to trust that gut, and you've got to trust those reads, and you've got to think this just does not feel right. Yeah, and you're going to be wrong sometimes, and you're going to look like an idiot. But on other times, you're going to look like the hero, and ultimately, it's going to pay off. So not too much more to add to that, really. Just thought it was a fairly fun spot to show you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers, guys.